Aberhart here, today's host of Growing the Future podcast. We're back with season 4, episode 16. You can sign up for our newsletter at growingthefuturepodcast.ca to get emails about our new episodes, and all of our past episodes are there as well. Make sure you give us a follow on all the social media platforms and on our YouTube channel. You can also find the Aberhart family companies online, starting with aberhartfarms.com to learn more about our farming operation in Saskatchewan, suregrowth.ca to learn more about the precision agronomy consulting services offered there, and convergencegrowth.com, where they accelerate solutions across food, health, and agriculture. And last but not least, aberhartagsolutions.ca, where we deliver one-of-a-kind fertility solutions of the future to your farm. Our next guest is a high-energy entrepreneur who thrives on navigating growth. He helps business owners get a grip on their business by solving root problems. Chris Jones is a certified EOS implementer, which we're going to learn more about, a proven entrepreneur, author, and keynote speaker. As a seasoned entrepreneur and EOS coach, Chris knows his way around business building and crisis recovery, known for his ability to find the strategic pivots hiding within challenging circumstances. Chris now focuses all of his energy on working with family-focused entrepreneurs to create game-changing transformation following the sale of his own business. We have had the pleasure of working with Chris as an EOS implementer within the farm team, and it's just been amazing to get to know and work with Chris. I'm super excited about the podcast today with Chris. We're going to be talking a little bit about, the journey from entrepreneur and running your own business into coaching other entrepreneurs. We'll talk about what is EOS and why does it matter to business owners in your team. And then thirdly, really how to build the life that you want and get the most out of your business and what you're doing as an entrepreneur, as that's something that I think that we all struggle with at times. So welcome to the show, Chris. So excited to have you on the show. We've had a lot of fun working together over the last few years, and I'm super excited to share this with our listeners today. So welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks. The feeling is mutual. I'm looking forward to today. Thanks for having me on.
And as usual, we got my sidekick Holden helping us on the show here today. So glad to have you here, Holden, and excited to what you're going to hear and learn from chatting with Chris. So, Chris, let's start out. Largely, this podcast is about growing the future and doing cool stuff and people out there innovating and running their businesses. But you have your own kind of entrepreneurial journey that's taken you to where you're at today, and I'm just curious to learn a little bit more about your background to share with the viewers and what's gotten you to where you are at today.
Oh man, it's a fun story. I started out heading into science and education and university and quickly learned that wasn't what was right for me. And luckily enough, I had a good mentor kind of point me towards entrepreneurship. And as soon as he mentioned it, I'm like, oh man, that would be amazing. And so I shifted my degree at University of Calgary over to the business focus and just never looked back, and got to the point where I ended up writing 2 course outlines to get an entrepreneurship focus because I love the small business thing so much. Loved the journey and started my first company while at school. I invented a football glove for receivers. I joke I couldn't catch very well, so I created a better mousetrap. And one thing led to the next, and that grew and was selling to NFL and CFL players and doing really well. Pivoted to distribution to find cool brands and bring them to Canada, become their head office for Canada. And gosh, with the team there, we launched almost 30 brands into the Canadian market. Had some epic failures and disasters, train wrecks, and had some really good successes too. We built 4 brands to number 1 market share in Canada. So that was pretty fun. And then at one point realized that, I was there for 19 years actively, owned the company for 23. And at one point it was like, I got to do something else. I want to do something else. I had like this passion for coaching, and eventually jumped and started a business coaching practice using the EOS model, which we can talk about later, but it helped me in my own business. So then I'm like, I got to coach other entrepreneurs how to do this. This is amazing. That started 7 years ago, 7.5 years ago. I've been doing this now. It's been a heck of a ride. There's the high
Yeah.
level.
Yeah, for sure. So in a sense now you're still running your own business. It's maybe structured in a little bit of a different way, but now really you're spending a lot of your time, helping other entrepreneurs that have a lot of problems to solve, much like myself. So, and that's
Yeah.
really cool. It's been awesome working with you. But yeah, what was it that kind of shifted your drive from being the entrepreneur that probably needs some support and coaching to wanting to be the guy that's supporting the entrepreneurs and helping them?
Yeah. Well, I'm the oldest of 3 boys and the oldest of 23 first cousins on my mom's side. So I have this big family, and I loved like coaching and leading. My dad was a teacher and a coach, and I really loved teaching and coaching. And at one point, I was like really deep in my entrepreneurial journey with the sporting goods business, and I'd have all these volunteer commitments, and I'd be like, oh, I got this meeting I got to go to tonight. I don't really want to go. I was exhausted. My energy was low. I'm like, well, I signed up. I made the commitment. I'm going to go. And 2 hours later, I'd walk out of that meeting and just like full of juice, like so energized. I'm like, that was amazing. This was so good. Let's go for a beer and keep talking about this. And I'm starting to recognize, like, inside of that 2 hours, there was something pretty magical going on. And it happened not once, it just happened time and time again. Like, well, what's happening in that 2 hours? And it was me coaching, mentoring entrepreneurs and other leaders. I'm like, this is really fun. And so I've been doing a bunch of volunteer work in that arena. And I'm like, well, what if I could get paid to do that? Like, I love doing it for free. Well, what would that look like? And I'm like, well, I can't do that yet because I'm just shooting from the hip, helping where I can, and getting paid appropriately. So I started really focusing in on like developing myself as a coach and a mentor, and sought out opportunities and learning and experience, and just all of my volunteer efforts got channeled in that direction, helping other people, but also gaining experience at the same time. And then in the middle of that journey, read the book Traction, which teaches the EOS model. And it was game changing. It changed my life, quite frankly. It helped us navigate massive growth in our business. And, to the point where, we lost 70% of our business overnight in 2012. Like, flip of a switch, 70% was gone. And in regrowing the business, we used the EOS tools to regrow it. In 20 months, we set a revenue record by 50%. It grew 7 times in revenue over the next 3 years. And I was like, wow, that was amazing. And EOS was a huge part of that regrowth. And so when I started thinking about, and then one day I woke up and I was done. I'm like, you know what? I've been here 19 years. I'm finished. Like, I've accomplished what I need to accomplish. And I was in Tofino, and I was at dinner at this really cool restaurant called the Wick and Shan, and looking out at the ocean, and I'm with this group of entrepreneurs, and everything just went quiet. And in my head, it was a noisy restaurant and vibrant and full, and everything just disappeared. And I like transported somewhere else. And all of a sudden people were like, Jones, what's up? And I'm like, I gotta leave my sporting goods company. And they were like, excuse me? Like, you're like the sporting goods guy. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just done. I got to do something else. Like, I've got other fish to fry. I got other things I got to do. And I've just done what I need to do here. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to coach somewhere. I don't even know what. Might be EOS, might be something else. I'm not sure. And I'm going to sleep on it because, it might be just the end of a retreat talking to me. I slept on it, 100% certain that it was the right path for me. And that led me into the coaching world. And yeah, it ended up being EOS. I'm like, I got to teach other people how to do this. It was so transformative for me and my team.
That's really cool. I mean, one of my first values is, doing what you love, right? And it's so cool to hear the passion that you have and experience that in working with you as well, Chris. And I think, a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we kind of define ourselves, to the business that we're in or currently running, and sometimes it's really hard to pivot out of that or change that, or kind of follow your gut. So that was really cool. And how do you think how do the rest of us kind of evaluate those things, or be able to step back and have the clarity to know if you're going in the right direction?
I think passion's definitely part of it. It's fun to follow passion, I think. But I also think it's a bigger conversation is purpose. Like, and I had no idea many years ago what that was, but, passion can come and go, but purpose can stay and ride out a longer haul. Without a doubt, my identity was very closely attached to my sporting goods business. And that's kind of who I've always been. I go into something, I go in crazy deep, and I own it. And it kind of, I become it in a way. And then it was like, having the time to reflect and be challenged by peers in a safe, loving, caring environment was huge for me. So I'm a part of the Entrepreneurs Organization, or EO for short, not to be confused with EOS, very different. EOS is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. That's a set of tools. EO is a group of entrepreneurs that's across the globe. And my EO mini group, called a forum, we get together monthly, 4 hours, lock everything down, confidential meeting, and we challenge each other, and we share our big wins, and we share our big challenges. It's all about how do we help ourselves be better as leaders in our businesses and our families and our communities. And those moments of deep reflection, and we do a big retreat once a year, and then usually a shorter mini one. And we bring facilitators in, and they take us to tough, uncomfortable spots that we wouldn't go ourselves. In those times of deep reflection, we'll just have an exercise where we don't talk to anybody for an hour, and we have to go and think, and, who am I right now? Where do I want to go? And what are my challenges? And those times of reflection, someone asked me an amazing question that said, who is Chris without Entrix Sports? And that hit me like a friggin' truck. And I'm like, well, I'm a lot more than that. And it was I didn't respond, but it just hit me. I'm like, whoa, I want to do more than this, and I'm comfortable here, but maybe it's time to shift. And then that time of reflection and that time to space and process my emotions and why that bothered me. And the time of reflection allowed me to recognize that I really needed to make a change, and it was going to be uncomfortable, and it was going to be scary, and that was super exciting. And it was time to make a jump. So if I'm answering your question, do you know you're on the right track? I think it's if you're sitting with yourself in times of quiet and you feel aligned and you feel right and you feel a little uncomfortable and a little bit scared, but it feels right, then I think you're on the right track.
Good. So one of the things that I wanted to chat with you about before we're going to get to US pretty quick, everyone's going to be wondering about that, but what are some of the, I know you've got some really good stories because I've heard a few of them, and there's probably some more that I haven't, but I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, we like to, it makes us feel more normal when we understand other people have challenges too. So, um,
Yeah.
and I think some of the challenges, those challenges are what helps you solve stuff. And I love the fact that there's a lot of coaches out there coaching, but maybe haven't experienced life in the same way or experienced what the entrepreneur is experiencing. And so that's what's been really valuable for me working with you, is you've been where I've been at times in your career, and helped me through some of those things. But what were some of the biggest challenges in your entrepreneurial career, and maybe some stories that really stuck out that, were, were really hard to work through?
Oh yeah, man, so many. I like to say I got a lot of valuable battle scars for my time there. I screwed lots of stuff up. I learned a lot. Um, Sometimes it took me more than once to learn the lesson. Um, I think one of the biggest challenges that I faced was the ability to delegate effectively. Like at the initial, like when I first started the company, it was just me, right? And a little bit of help here and there, but it was just me, one man show. Uh, Everything from packing the boxes to designing the product to managing the production to selling it to paying the invoices. Like it was 100%. And then as I started to add people on, I actually didn't have any management experience at all, other than tell my brothers what to do, but that was a little different, And so managing other people was difficult for me. And then, being a leader, that, again, some leadership experience in a family environment and a captain of basically every sports team I was ever on. But managing in a business environment was different. Leading in that environment was different. And so I, quite frankly, was the micromanager initially. And I had good people leave because of it. And they should have. I didn't, I've talked to them since, and we're all good now, but I I didn't handle that super well. And then I went like completely the other direction of completely hands-off management, which was, we lost good people and stuff blew up there too. And learning how to delegate effectively was a journey that I eventually got very good at. And that's what enabled me to, like, I went down to 3 hours a month when I started my EOS practice. So I still owned the Intric Sports, but I didn't work there day to day. I had zero role in the day to day. So I got to the point where I delegated so well that I didn't have to work there anymore, and enjoyed that. I did that for 3 years from the sidelines, just guiding the leadership team before I did sell the company. But yeah, delegating was tough. Like, what am I? The flip point for me was I hired this guy Frankie, and he was my I hired him as my sales manager. We had 14 reps all across the country, and we had to manage all these people and 300 stores and that we sold to. And one day he calls me and he's like, "Why did you hire me if you're just going to do my job for me?" And I'm like, "Oh." And I knew he was right. And I just had to think about that one for a little bit. I'm like, you know, you might have a point there. What are we going to do about that? And so what was amazing about that is it opened a conversation about, like, how do we do it better, right? How can I let go? And I'm like, well, I'm scared if you like screw something up and maybe you're not going to do it exactly my way. And we talked about that and worked it through. And eventually we built the trust between us and built some systems and put tools in place that allowed me to let go and still rest well, that I wasn't afraid of, that it wasn't going to be done right. I think that was a triple negative. Anyways, it allowed me to just calm the squirrels in my mind that, like, hey, they've got it. They're taking care of it the right way. And I had good people. And it was just kind of getting out of their way and letting them do it.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that probably many of us struggle with is, as our business grows, we all started doing everything, especially, farming is very much the same, right? You have
Yeah.
every role on the farm, and then you get to the point as farming has changed and the business grows, and any business, all of a sudden now you need structure. And I think a little bit about that even with Holden, my son, on the podcast here too, thinking about, delegating tasks to him and communicating and finding that balance between being looking micromanaging over the shoulder and being the annoying parent, um but also not, just letting them totally go out there in the world and step on too many rakes, right? But
Yeah. Yeah. It's a fine balance to strike, to figure that out. I mean, obviously I don't know if you want another example, Terry, where you want to head with it, but
give her whatever you want to share.
well, losing 70% overnight was a fairly significant problem. you know, that was one of those moments of, holy shit, what am I going to do now? Oh, I hope you don't have to edit that out. But
That's all good.
okay, so yeah, it's like, I don't know. You ever heard of what a plexectomy is? Like, I
No.
needed a plexectomy. It's like you get a piece of plexiglass installed in your stomach so that when your head's up your ass, you can see where you're going. So yeah, so when when I lost that much of my business in one moment, I was in need of a plexectomy. Um, it was a tough spot, right? Like, I had a number of staff. Uh, I mean, I questioned whether the business could survive with only the amount of revenue that was left. What am I doing this for if we can lose that much in one go? It was a dangerous spot. Luckily, I kind of knew it was coming. Like, there was writing on the wall that relationship was going to come to an end. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And one of the mentors that I had, as I was talking to about that, he said, well, what's your plan B if this happens? And so I gave him a list. So I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing. And he said, okay, cool. Is that written down somewhere? And I'm like, no. He's like, okay, next month when we meet, I want to see the written plan, including a budget, the people plan, what expenses you're dropping, how you're going to recover revenue, etc. I'm like, oh, okay. So I wrote the plan up, wrote the budget, did the whole thing, and then presented it to him the next month. He poked some holes in it. I made a few tweaks to it and went and filed it away. And then, boom, lose 70%, heads up my butt. I'm like, oh no, what do I do? And I'm like, oh, wait a sec, I got that plan B. And so I went and found it, pulled it out, and I looked at the plan. There were like 200 decisions made in that plan. And I'm like, wow, this is a really good plan. Oh, except for this one and this. And there were like 2 decisions that were like, no, that totally doesn't make sense for the situation that we're currently in. And like, let's get clear, with my head on my butt, my capacity for making decisions was fairly limited. And I had to make 2 decisions instead of 200. And so we decided to regrow the business, made those couple decisions I had to make with, talk to my wife and, hey, like, are you in for this? Like, this is what it looks like. And put the plan into action. And the first couple of weeks were pretty gnarly. Like, it was a rough first 2 weeks of going through that. Best advice I got through that is rip the Band-Aid off, like, get through the pain as fast as possible. And so I just charged headlong into the storm and powered through the difficult conversations, difficult decisions that popped up as we had to terminate the relationship. And in 2 weeks, basically, I was free from the past and could look in the windshield instead of the rearview mirror. and started regrowing the business. And I was having a ton of fun doing it. And it was that Frankie guy that was the only guy. It was him and I left. Whole fun story around that if you want. But him and I hunkered down and started rebuilding it. And people would come up to me and like, Chris, I'm so sorry about what happened. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm having a riot right now. And they thought I'd lost it. They're like, do you need to go see a doctor? Like, they thought I was crazy. But it was super fun for me to like wipe the slate clean, start over, redraw the rules. I ended up writing my own agreements going forward, so I was never put in a precarious position like I was like that again. And was way more diligent in choosing my partnerships going forward so that I had less exposure, and also was able to diversify my portfolio, which I knew I was way too heavy in one arena. And then we got caught, right? We tried, but we couldn't quite get there. The blank slate gave us the opportunity to redraw the rules of the game, and it made us way, way stronger in the end.
Awesome. Holden, you got any thoughts or comments at this point yet?
I did have one question.
Yeah.
Chris, I heard you mention, what was it called? I can't remember what the word was now, but I'm looking at this website that my dad sent me, and I see you have a book that you wrote.
Yeah.
And so, what is that? What is that book about?
Yeah. Relentless AF. Relentless and fun. I know what you're out about. A playful twist on that phrase. It's about really the disaster story of losing 70% overnight and what I did to recover it. As well as lessons learned along the way as a leader. Like, I'm a coach, I'm a teacher. I'm like, how can I like share some of my screw ups? I'm willing to be pretty vulnerable there. And people can learn from my mistakes. Like, hey, maybe if you don't do this, it might save you some heartache. So I wrote a book really about that and challenged the reader to kind of think about themselves and where they're at in their leadership journey, their entrepreneurial journey, so that it can help them.
Awesome. So, Chris, yeah, you've just wrote this book, Relentless. It's coming out this fall. Where could we find it? Where will we see it? And also, I think you also do keynote addresses and stuff like that, right? So, just share a little bit about that quickly.
So that relentlesschrisjones.com is where you can order the book. You download the first chapter right now, and then the book will drop sometime this fall. Let's hope. It's been quite the journey to get this done. And I've built a keynote address focused on like one key element around the really how to let go and still sleep at night, the delegation roadmap, because it was such a big challenge for me. And I see it as such a big problem with leaders across the globe right now that most of them don't believe they can do it well. The numbers are around 70% of leaders don't think that they can delegate well. And their staff agree. Like, it's 67%, the studies that have been done. Like, so the leaders think they suck at it and their staff agree. So that's a problem. And so how do we fix that? And so I've created a keynote around that, because I think that the stuff that I've read about it and researched on it, like, people are really focused on the logical, rational side of the equation. Well, if I don't delegate, then, we can't grow. I'll be the bottleneck. Like, it's a very rational conversation. Well, how do we delegate? But, well, we need to make a plan and we need to go over it with the person we're delegating to. Again, very rational. But it's the emotional side that holds us back. And I don't see a lot of the stuff talking about the emotional side. A great analogy, if I'm going to just run with this for a minute, is there's like a rider and an elephant. Jonathan Haidt wrote about it in the happiness hypothesis. And the rider is like the logical, rational side of our brain. I know I need to let go, or I'll be the bottleneck, and I'm going to give them a plan, and all this very logical. But the elephant is everything else. It's the the irrational, often unconscious, emotional side of the equation. And the rider's kind of small compared to an elephant. And so if you don't have the elephant on side, like you could talk to the rider all day long, you're not going where you want to go. And so I think that the dialogue should be switched to like 90% of the conversation should be around the emotional journey to letting go and delegating better. And like 10% on the how to. Because if we don't, like, I've seen it happen real time, and leaders are like, oh yeah, absolutely, I need you to speak up and delegate better. But when they start doing that, the leader's like, well, screw that, that's a bad idea. And so like they say they want to delegate, but then when it comes down to it, they're not executing well on it. And that's because the elephant's in the way, right? They haven't dealt, is there fear? Is there ego? Like pride attached to that? Like, am I still gonna be relevant? Or are you gonna hurt my baby? Like, there's all these emotional things that can be frequently irrational and unconscious that are at play. And if we don't deal with that, how can we delegate better?
Yeah, I think that just reminds me of some great coaching I got just, delegating or working with family where, a lot of times, and this probably happens just with your team as well, but, things are going a certain way and you approach it in the way that like, hey, you can't do that anymore. You got to do it this way, and kind of a bit of in a correcting kind of manner, which usually does not get a very positive response. And some of the coaching I got at that time was like, you need to change the conversation. Like, this is what I need help with. Like, I'm struggling with this, and I, understand the why. And when I started implementing that, I'm still not as good at it as I should be. But when you start doing it that way, all of a sudden the response is totally different, even though the problem you're trying to solve is exactly the same. And I think that's one thing that, we do struggle with as entrepreneurs, is understanding how to delegate well. We want to have more time. We don't want to have all this stuff on our plates, but we're typically, how we think and how the rest of the world thinks is way different. And most of us don't always recognize or understand that. So, and we think about, one thing that I've recognized too as entrepreneurs, this stuff is in our head, like all of the time. We never shut off. So when we communicate something, we think it's 100% clear. But the reality is most times it's not. And, it's one of the things they teach us, right? Is you got to say something 7 times for someone to hear it the first time. And so kind of understanding that a bit more is really valuable. So I think this kind of, leads us up a little bit to, let's talk a little bit about what EOS is and the community and the coaching. This is something that we've got involved in now, and I know of other, pretty progressive businesses that are involved in, and it's a bit of a culture and a bit of a club as well. But it's been incredible for our business and our journey and where we want to go on my journey as an entrepreneur. But let's just share a little bit about that, and then we'll get a little bit further into getting the life that you want out of your business and what you're doing with your life.
Sure. So EOS, it comes out of the book Traction. Like I mentioned, there's a handful of books now. There's, I think, 6 books in the series, but Traction is the one that started it all. And when we say entrepreneurial operating system, people are like, oh, is that software? And it's like, no, like it's simple, practical tools that help us manage the human energy in the business better. Is there software to support? Sure, there's some, right? But that's not what EOS is all about. The focus is on, like, how do we help our people work better together? And it's all about figuring out, like, as a leader, like, what do you want out of the business? And everybody can want something different, right? I've got some that are like, I want to grow this massive entity. I want others that are like, I want to feed the world, and others are like, I want to save the planet. They're all relevant. It's like, what do you want to sell the company? Like, that's sometimes the entrepreneur's goal. Like, how do I build it so it's an amazing company? We have this incredible exit, and I make all my staff rich because they're in ownership seats. And so, what's the game? What's the long-term goal that we're going after? And then we put a handful of simple, practical tools in place in order to make it happen. And so we say it helps us achieve three things called vision, traction, and healthy. And vision, where are we going? How are we going to get there? But how do we get our leaders on the same page with what that looks like? They're oftentimes not on the same page when I first meet them. Traction, how do we execute better with discipline and accountability as leaders so we actually achieve the vision that we've set out? And then healthy, how do we come together as a functional, cohesive team? You know, we become a leadership team. And, you know, many leaders struggle to work within teams, especially strong ones. And so we start with the leadership team, and then we teach them how to use these tools, and then we roll it out to the rest of the organization, and the rest of the organization is going to follow the leaders if it's done well. And so we get to the point everyone in the company knows the vision, they understand it, and their human energy, like everyone's rowing in the same direction. Everyone's acting with discipline, accountability, gaining traction consistently. We're just getting shit done. And we're working together as a functional, cohesive, healthy team that loves working together, right? So that's kind of the short version of the journey, Terry. And so I get in a room with leadership teams and I teach them these basic tools and then facilitate them. How do we use these in our business? We call it implementing. That's why we have the sexy title of an implementer. So very sexy title. So I help them implement these tools and teach the rest of the people in their company. And these really simple disciplines help us grow and help us achieve what we want to achieve. And quite frankly, one of the big things that drives me is helping free people from their business so they're not shackled to it. Like, as entrepreneurs, I've seen this play out so many times, is that like we start this business to achieve freedom, create impact in the world, and it starts working, and then all of a sudden we wake up one day and we're like handcuffed to the business, and we're working evenings until 2 a.m, and we're working on the weekends, and we're not taking vacations, or when we do take vacations, we're picking up cell phone calls or checking email or going and logging into a computer. And I speak from experience. Like, I went to Hawaii for the first time ever. I didn't grow up with a lot of money. We never got on a plane once as a family growing up ever. So I'm doing okay as an entrepreneur. I'm like, I'm taking my family to Hawaii for 2 weeks. And this was like my dream place to go in the world. So I fly my wife and kids and we go to Hawaii. And my team's back home. And I'm like going and checking email every day and calling in, I had to solve a problem. This was a long time ago. Find a way to call back home. And my team back home is like, Chris, what are you doing? You're in Hawaii on vacation. Like, we've got this. And it was ridiculous, right? Again, I struggled to delegate initially. And, so I see this, the reason I am so passionate about this work with EOS is how do we unshackle leaders from their business so that we create great work when we're there. But when we have time to do other passions, we can disconnect fully, and we know our team's got it and they're going to take care of it. And it's going to be as good or better when we get back. And that drives me to no end. Man, those moments, I've had leaders come to me and say, Chris, I just went away for 2 weeks. And it was the first time in 19 years that I didn't take an email or a phone call while I was on vacation. And that was an employee. Like, entrepreneurs, this is a huge challenge, but this was an employee that was doing this. They cared a lot about the company, worked on every vacation. Like, I know I'm making a difference when I hear stories like that.
Yeah, I think it's an incredible, and these are the type of things that we really need as entrepreneurs, and sometimes we don't know how to get the help, and you got to invest some time. But what I've experienced working within the system is really there's all kinds of management tools and ideas and structure, and as visionaries, we're always bringing this stuff back, right? But it's not connected and it's not congruent. So what I love about what I've learned about the whole system is essentially it's a summary or a simplification of every one of the best kind of management books and concepts. And many of these different books, whether it's Scaling Up or Good to Great or the strategic coach concepts, are all kind of similar, but maybe just slightly different. But what I love about what EOS has done is this is kind of bundled all that in the most simplistic form as a system to follow. And when you follow it, it does create the magic that you're describing. And I think it also helps have open and healthy discussions within your team, which I think many of us are fearful or might even view as something wrong if you're going to get in an argument at your weekly meeting with your leadership team or a debate. But what we've learned is those are the exact conversations that you need to be having. And when you can have that openness and that trust and accountability, you can leave the business, or you can focus on the things that you need to do, and everything else is taken care of.
Oh yeah, we call it real simple results, and it gets real sometimes. And that means it's not uncomfortable. It is a holistic system, right? It does manage all the moving parts. But when we talk about open, honest, and vulnerable a lot, as you know, and share with our listeners, that those hard conversations, yeah, we're taught from kindergarten, like, don't say anything nice, or don't say anything, or be nice, right?
That's my mom saying, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, right? That's what we were taught, right?
I went off on the wrong tangent. Yeah, it's 100% what we were told, right? And so, and especially in Canada, we're super guilty of this. We are kind. We are so kind that it's insanely cruel. It is so common for us to like, oh yeah, that's fine. And what we're really saying is it's horrible and I don't have the courage to say it. And then, or, I just want to be nice, right? So yeah, that's fine. Sure. I joke that I've been married long enough to know that sure isn't yes. And it's, but we're so kind to the point of like, oh, they're not doing their job well, let's say. We're not giving them clarity on where they're falling short. And then we get frustrated with them because they're not doing good enough work, and then we fire them. And it's not their fault. It's ours. As leaders of not creating the clarity of where they're falling short. And sometimes that means having a tough conversation that's super uncomfortable. It's like, you're not doing what I need you to do. Why is that? You're not achieving the results that we need to achieve out of this role. How can we help you get better? And those are not often fun conversations to have, but at least we can get to the root cause of the problem and maybe do something about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's powerful, right?
Yeah, so let's kind of take this to the last, theme now, is where, really doing this is about, supporting that entrepreneur in your life and business, and that gets really blurry. And, this is really, really meaningful to me because, Chris, you've helped me through some of this, but I want to just share a little bit of this story to set the stage here. But and Gino Wickman is a founder of EOS and wrote the book Traction and stuff, and he's got another book called The EOS Life. kind of his guideline for how to live life as an entrepreneur. And I remember at his keynote at the conference in Orlando this spring that we went to, he talked about being who you are as an entrepreneur and just kind of being able to celebrate that. And he told this story about, the surprise 40th birthday party where he had about 5 or 6 different groups of people that were in his life, his work group and his, exercise group and his family. And he came into that surprise birthday party and just, was afraid because he was like, which version of Gino am I going to be today? Because he realized, he's acting differently depending on the situation. I think we all do that at times, depending on the situation. But, that was just like a huge aha for me, and him talking about, hey, like as entrepreneurs, like generally speaking, we're whatever, 3-4% of the population, and most of us are bat crap crazy in one way or another. It's normal for an entrepreneur not to be normal. And, at some point you just need to embrace that. And I think that was like a huge mind shift for me, because I've probably really struggled to celebrate, the success that we've created. And especially coming from a farming background, very humble. My dad was always very humble and taught us that. And not that, you want to be boastful about those things, but just, that was just a huge breakthrough for me in realizing like, hey, I can create the environment that I want. I can be who I want to be. And if people don't like that, they're probably people that I don't need or want in my life. And I think that generally speaking, as entrepreneurs, this is something that we really struggle with, just and balancing the challenges of running your business, but all the rewards that come with it. And this is very close to my heart, because I think, as our family and, with Holden here on the podcast, I think a lot of times our family and our children largely see the negative side of entrepreneurship and running your own business, because, that's what comes out when you come home at the end of the day and you're tired, or you're, something blew up in your business, right? And they don't maybe realize that the trip to Hawaii or the cabin at the lake or the surf boat that you're riding behind came because of the opportunities you created in your business. But you got to find the time to get there to enjoy them, right?
Yeah, it's one of the things that drew me to the community of EOS. I mean, it is a group of crazy entrepreneurs. There's like 520 or something globally now. 540. It's growing so fast. And Gino talks about let your freak flag fly. Like, it's such a fun statement of just like own where you're nutty. And we're all nutty, whether it's entrepreneurs or each of our leadership teams. Just own it and celebrate it, and celebrate the things you suck at by firing yourself from those roles. Like, I think the happiest day of my life, aside from my wife and kids being born, was like delegating bookkeeping. Like, I hated bookkeeping. I was really good at it because I'm good with numbers, but oh my, it sucked the life energy out of me. And I have I have a short attention span for highly detailed stuff. And then it's just like, stop talking to me. I'm done. Time out. And just kind of owning the stuff I'm not good at and embracing the stuff that I am good at. Gosh, Dave Rendell has an amazing book, and he's an incredible keynote speaker. And his book is The Freak Factor. And same concept. We can spend all this time and energy developing something we're weak at, and we'll get a bump. It will grow. But if you get people that have natural ability and spend the same amount of training in that arena, we'll get 50% growth. They'll get like 10x growth, like 1,000%. And he's got studies to back that stuff up, like reading courses has been done. So why are we spending all this time trying to balance out our weaknesses, strengthen our weaknesses? Forget that. How about we strengthen our strengths and make them insane superpowers and delegate the weaknesses to people who are actually genetically encoded and wired to do this stuff. We're going to get more energy doing the work we do. The work's going to get done better because we've delegated people that actually love and have skills to do that kind of stuff. And everything works better. And that's the kind of thinking that creates freedom for us to have time off, to go to the lake and go on vacations where we're disconnected because we got rock stars doing what they were born to do in behind us. That's life-changing stuff.
That was a big aha for me when I started coaching, understanding the unique ability. I used to delegate a lot of things that I enjoyed doing because who would want to do the things that you hate, right? And I thought, I don't want to be this jerk boss or leader that's giving someone else this crap job in my mind. But then, I realized that some of the stuff I was delegating to that person was a crap job in their mind, and they would love to do the thing that I hated because that's their unique ability. Or, like data entry, I can't imagine how someone would enjoy data entry, but there's people out there that love that, right? And so that was a big, aha for me. And a lot of times we probably start by delegating the things that we're good at and enjoy, which is the last thing that we should be delegating.
Yeah, it's one of the main profiling tool that we teach, as you know, and within EOS is called Kolbe, Kolbe. And they talk about blocks of energy. How much gas do we have in the tank for certain things? So take a data entry role for, like you and I have a similar Kolbe in our ability, our gas in the tank to do data entry type work. We're running out of gas really, really fast. Whereas some people have huge gas in the tank for that kind of work. So not only are they going to love doing it, they're actually genetically encoded to do it way better. So they're going to do it twice as fast as us and make 5 times less errors. And they're going to go home going, yeah, it was a good day. Or if you and I had to do that all day, we'd be like, I'm going to kill myself. This is horrible. I hate my life. Right? So it's like you said, it's hard to imagine someone else loves it, but there's people out there that really love bookkeeping, and I'm really thankful they're in the world because it's just not me. And so let's find them. And I love my bookkeeper. She's amazing, and she does a way better job than I ever would.
That's awesome. One of the other things that you commented earlier that I think is really important too is just, that capacity to make decisions. And whether you're an entrepreneur or you're working within an entrepreneurial business, I think this is one of the other, larger things that we're missing out or not leveraging. And when you're working all the time and your head's not clear, I've really recognized this over the last few years, kind of learning more about this. And I'm still not as good as I'd like to be or should be. But when you're just in the grind all the time, when you're in the weeds all the time, when you're never getting out of your business, when you're never unplugging, you get to the point where just, everything's really foggy. You're kind of in the juggle. And even the simplest decisions seem incredibly hard to make, and or you can't make those decisions. But then you get to a place where you have that great unplug holiday, or you get that recharge, and you come back and it's just like all of a sudden everything's so clear. And I find that ironically it goes against everything that we were taught in our culture too. Like my dad always used to say, when he grew up, whoever plowed the most in a day got ahead. It just whoever worked the hardest, right? And there's even like Grant Cardone mentality is like go to work and just outwork everybody. But now my dad says, if you want to get ahead, you got to be the smartest, not just work the hardest, right? And what I've recognized is a lot of times I get more done more effectively and make better decisions the more time I take off, the more I get done, which is counterintuitive of what most of us think. But I've recognized a really clear pattern between getting burnt out and then just either making bad decisions or just really struggling to make those decisions.
Oh, that's a great topic. So I'm in strategic coach as well, and let's create a little bit of clarity of what is the difference? Strategic coach is like the operating system for the entrepreneur. Dan Sullivan is the founder, as you know, for our listeners that don't know, you know, and EOS is the operating system for the business. And so both of them are like, how do we do what we do better? My strategic coach, I'm in that program as well. And my coach, Chad Johnson, freaking amazing. He nailed this one for me. And he said, a great year as an entrepreneur tends to come down to 2 to 3 great decisions. And how can we make those great decisions if we're mired in the weeds of the day-to-day, where we're like sprinting from one thing to the next and firefighting? And I mean, let's get real. This is what entrepreneurship is some days. But if we have the time to step away and to think, and yeah, like you're saying, that I love the plow the most fields wins. You know, I was taught too, like, how do we be productive, right? I have a need to feel productive. But sometimes the most important thing we can do is to take time to think and reflect. So I have to fly to LA to go to strategic coach. It's a 3-day endeavor. Go there, have dinner with the crew the night before, full day session, have dinner with the crew the night after, and then fly back the next day. And I've actually started flying down early the day before and flying out later in the day after to give myself hours and hours of think time. And man, it's helped me immensely. All of a sudden I figured out on one of those trips, I shortcutted something that it saved me 3 years of development of my speaking author business. I wouldn't have figured that out if I was sprinting from one thing to the next. And so having that time away, so I'd even, like your dad's thing of who's the smartest, I know a lot of smart people that are sprinting from one thing to the next. I think the guy who wins, or the lady who wins, is going to be the person that makes the best decisions at the right times. And so we got to be smart, and we have to have the time to put our brain power to work where it's not like in a constant state of stress. I say you can't make great decisions when you're being chased by a bear. And if we're, the concept is like we can't make great decisions when we're in a highly stressed state. So if we can't get out of that highly stressed state, we're not going to make the best decisions possible at the right times. And so the importance of checking out, having time away has never been more important as leaders.
I think there's always, that you kind of feel like you're being chased by the bear a lot of times as an entrepreneur. But yeah, slowing down and having that clarity. I love this quote from Henry Ford. The reality is like we get our value to the business and our team is our mindset, is our vision, is what's up here in our planning and our thinking and our strategizing, right? And so it's sometimes hard to recognize that when you're in the heat of the battle and slowing down to do that. But that's really our value as leaders. And, it relates to this quote from Henry Ford that I love. And it's, his quote is, "Thinking is the hardest work there is," which is probably the reason why so few engage in it. So, it's,
yeah,
it really is quite
quote,
true.
Right? Oh, I was scared to be alone. I'm a total extrovert. I get it, be energy from being around people. I'm sure you're shocked at that. But I was like, if you made me like meditate, I was like, oh yeah, I tried that once. I did it for like 30 seconds. That was enough. I don't know. It was almost like a scare to being alone, of just sitting with myself, with my thoughts. And I had to overcome that. And I struggled to like do something where I didn't get to talk to anybody for a while. But I don't know, I evolved is a weird way to say it maybe, but I changed my perspective of like, I owe it to my team. I owe it to my family. I owe it to myself to give myself the gift of clarity of where I want to go next and where I want to lead my team, my business, my family, my community next. And if that means I got to sit and think for a while and lean into the uncomfortable thoughts, then that gave me such incredible clarity, and that helped me significantly. Yeah, it's now I like absolutely thrive on alone time. I still love my people connection time 100%, but I really, really value my alone time. My big decisions have been made in those times of reflection, like the time in Tofino. Like we spent hours and hours that retreat in alone time thinking, where did I make that decision? It was in that time of reflection, and that changed my life. It changed my family's life. It changed all the people that I worked with's lives, like it, and now all the, the clients and people like you that I get to work with. It's been a big change in the universe, so to speak. I never used to be very woo-woo, and I totally believe in that stuff now. It makes a big difference.
So yeah, as you were talking about that, Chris, it reminded me of some of the coaching that you gave me and us in our coaching sessions, and that feedback at that time. You said, Terry, you need to work on being more concise, right? And that was really helpful for me, because I realized that, as a visionary, I like to talk and I like to share, and a lot of times, sometimes I'm sharing my uncurated, undrafted, unpolished vision, which can seem pretty all over the place, right? So sometimes I'm just basically talking out loud, and it does create a lot of confusion. There's a lot of things rattling around in your head, and so that's, getting more clear, repeating that more often, simplifying it. It reminds me of one of the main or key tools that Dan Sullivan uses with Strategic Coach, right? The impact filter. And really all that is just clarifying, the why and the what and the how of a project, right? And so that is something that I think as leaders, we do need to spend more time getting more clear. We need to spend more time being more concise. And we need to share that vision as much as possible, but we also have to be cautious about how we share that, because if we don't do it in an efficient or clear manner, it could actually create more chaos.
Ah, man. Speaking my language there. And I, like you, can be wordy at times. And I've worked at it hard, and I've worked with coaches, and I took a great speaking development program, like for keynote speaking, but it talks about that. And in general, just as leaders, we are professional speakers in front of our companies all the time. And our ability to get our message across concisely, on point, to have the impact so that it's memorable and that people take action based on that is paramount.
Yeah, you're right. Right, Holden, we got...
That's
yeah, for sure.
Too, right?
All right, Holden, we got you back here. You got any comments or questions for Chris as we're getting close to the wrap here?
Yeah, I've had like one question pretty much for the whole time, and it is, what does it mean to delegate, and how can you become better at it?
Okay. So what does it mean to delegate? So, let's say we need to cook dinner together tonight. And I'm like, hey, I need you to peel the carrots and cut the carrots. And that's the only information I give you. And I'm going to cook the steaks. And I think done wrong looks like I don't give you enough information to do it well. I don't trust that you're going to do it. I don't train you properly. And then while you're halfway through it, I'd elbow you out of the way. Here, let me show you how to do it. And then I just do it for you. And you're going, well, what was the point of that? Versus done right looks like, hey, I need you to cut or peel and cut the carrots, and I need them in 1 inch, chunks. I need them julienned a certain way. It looks like this. And I give you one demonstration, or if you already know it, I'm like, hey, do you understand what I'm asking for? I need it done by 5:30 so that I can put them on the barbecue with the steaks. And then I get out of the way and let you do it once. If you say, yeah, I've got it, I have the information I need to do it right. So I think, and that works in business too. Like I need you to ship some boxes for me. I need you to till this field. If you're telling me, don't tell them what equipment they got to use or what direction they need to do or where the gas is to fill the tractor. Like, it's not happening. But if you do it right, the person does it, they do a great job, they feel fulfilled because they contributed, they made an impact. So that's what delegation is. And the funny thing is, I just gave you the logical steps of like how to delegate. As it gets to be more impactful things, like, hey, I need you to sell this crucial customer in my business. Now we get into the tougher emotional stuff of like, well, what if you don't do it right and we lose the customer? The stakes get higher. The risk is higher if it goes wrong. So now the importance of how do I train you effectively and teach you a good process so that I can say, you know what, Holden's actually a better sales guy than me now, or as good, and I have complete trust in him doing that work. And that's quite frankly on me as your leader and manager to do that effectively so that when you do start firing live rounds in sales calls that you can execute on that really well. So how do we do that better? That's part of it. The other how is that we've got to understand our emotions at play. As I delegated all of my roles in my sporting goods business, I had to get over like, hey, there was some ego involved of like, I want to be important. I want to be loved and relevant. And what, don't you need me anymore if I don't have this role? And I had to like, oh, that's probably not a good reason. And maybe not where this thinking isn't going to help me get to where I need to go. So I'm going to recognize the emotion, and then I'm going to like, well, how can I let go of that? Because it's not going to help me get to where I need to go. Was there fear involved? 100%. Someone's going to screw it up. They're going to hurt my baby. That company's like my baby, right? I raised it from birth. And so how do I get over that fear? And for me, I recognized, and I told people, I'm afraid to let this go because the stakes are big and I'm afraid it could go wrong, and it's gone wrong in the past. So I talked about it. I verbalized it with my teammates and I said, but I trust you. This is my issue. How do we work together to get you ready so that I don't have to worry about this anymore? And so recognizing the emotion and then working through it with my teammate of like, hey, every now and then that irrational elephant's going to show up and I got to learn how to check it, maybe talk with my elephant a little bit, and then, find my way to work around it. Does that give you something, Holden?
Yeah, that answered my question. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure we could continue on for a long time around these subjects. It's something that we're both really passionate about, but I think we're kind of getting close to wrapping up. So one of the things, just Chris, let us know, how do we find you? How do we get a hold of you? How do we learn more about what you're doing with your coaching and that kind of stuff?
Sure. RelentlessChrisJones.com has both my book stuff as well as my speaking stuff and a link to my EOS Worldwide website. There is eosworldwide.com/Chris Jones. I've got a microsite there. But the one site, if you can remember anything, is RelentlessChrisJones.com. and you can
Awesome.
find me there.
Well, thanks so much for being on the podcast with us today, Chris. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure working with you. For me personally, joining Strategic Coach and Dan Sullivan was a big kind of life-changing coaching and group and environment that I got into, and then being able to join with EOS for that coaching for the team has been equally life-changing for us here and for me in the business, and I believe for our team here as well. It's been really amazing. Thanks so much. Kind of a couple cascading highlights as we ride off into the sunset here. What's your kind of couple key messages that you'd like to share with our listeners here in closing?
Oh, thanks for having me on, Terry. It's been this podcast has been like working with you. It's always fun. The diligence of finding the right people to work with and the right customers, the right clients to work with is amazing. Everybody wins when we find the right fit.